All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Give me a touchdown on the top prop bets for Monday night. We got a 2-game slate. Let's go and get into it. First, let's get into some quick recaps from how the bets have went thus far. This was in the previews video. I kind of mentioned that I really liked these bets. There's some more that haven't started yet, so we'll see. Devon Valet, very tilting. If you guys were following along with that, he had the over, I think it was 3 times. I know 2 for sure. I didn't get to catch the full game, actually. I was at a wedding. But pretty good stuff there with Joe Mixon, and then Ben Sims getting his 1 reception. Then another bet slip that I gave out ends up going 3 for 5. Ended up being a little bit tilting just with Chuba Hubbard getting a garbage time TD in that game. Very annoying, actually. He really shouldn't have been in the game. That one really felt like a bad beat, but still 3 for 5. And then looking at the London game recap here, the top prop bet that we had on the board was Jalen Polk to get under his 4.5 fantasy score. I kind of mentioned that I like the Drake May over fantasy score prop bet a little bit better on Underdog. Kind of annoying that Evan Ingram didn't get us over. Then we jump on into the Underdog bets here. Again, kind of felt like a bad beat here with Josh Allen barely getting his over, just in the sense that literally the play before basically the game was over with the James Cook rushing touchdown, he gets his over fantasy score, just the way it played out. Like, that was the last play. Had a touchdown on a 2nd and goal that really, they ended up getting like 6 total plays on the goal line, which it kind of felt like a bad beat there. Now, this ended up being like one of the better bets, just a simple 2-slip bet. Obviously, Kirk Cousins with his under fantasy score. We're just taking advantage of that prop line difference. And I did mention I want to run out the Drake May over fantasy score a lot more on Underdog. But again, those two were both big prop line differences that we saw. Then I also had one with Kobe Parkinson and Cousins that I kind of recommended to you guys as well. But I want to toss this one out. So 7 out of the top 8 prop bets on the 9-5 Underdog cheat sheet ended up hitting. The only one that missed was Nick Chubb getting his over fantasy score, and that's simply because he scored a touchdown. We know touchdowns are fluky. Kind of tilting that the top 8 did not hit, and I'm kind of just bringing that up because obviously Underdog lets you do 8 slip bets. Now, is everyone doing those? No. Okay, so I imagine everyone that's using the 9-5 Underdog cheat sheet had a very good Sunday. So overall, another pretty solid week picks wise. Just the slight few breaks in terms of the bet of the day given out. The slight things we need to go our way, very slight things to go our way to have a massive day in terms of, the bets of the days given out. Just missing out again, that Josh Allen one. Very tilting there. But overall, obviously, very good pick-wise. Hopefully, we can do that again for this Monday night slate where it's a 2-game slate. So one of the games is going to be the Ravens versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is an extremely high-scoring game. 50 points is going to be the game total, or projected game total for that game. And surprisingly enough, the Ravens are only 3.5-point favorites, which I know the Bucs have been playing well, and I know the Ravens tend to keep teams in it. I was a little bit shocked by that one. I thought it'd be slightly higher. Then we look at the Arizona Cardinals versus the Los Angeles Chargers. 44-point game total. So again, a decently high-scoring game, especially for that Chargers offense that, could potentially be without their top receiver in Quentin Johnston. Ladd McConkey a little bit banged up as well, so we'll see if they play. I mentioned Justin Herbert really looked good last week against a tough opponent, and so we'll see what happens there. Projected to be a close game. Chargers are 1.5-point favorites. I would agree with that line that they should be 1.5-point favorites. At the same time, it really wouldn't be surprising to see the Cardinals go out and win by a touchdown. They've been a little bit kind of hit or miss in terms of their on-field play, and it's really, you can't fully describe it. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be back, though, from his concussion, which means Trey McBride, who was looking like he'd be in for a massive target share, that's probably not going to be the case, but we'll get into that a little bit more so, right now. We'll jump into that first game, which is going to be the Bucs versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, looking at it, guys, I do want to talk about the tight ends here specifically because Mark Andrews finally had a touchdown last week, but if you take away that kind of one play, he's kind of back to the norm. Now, he has seen a little bit more targets. But the theme when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, just in general, with Lamar Jackson as their quarterback, is everyone has been random in terms of their fantasy production. The only player that we could really truly count on week to week to be pretty sustainable in terms of their production was Mark Andrews entering into this season. Now, obviously, that's not been the case. He has actually seen a pretty big reduction in his snaps as well, in favor of Isaiah Likely getting more snaps. Now, last week we did see it be more of a Zay Flowers week. I think they would prefer each week to be a Zay Flowers week if the opportunity presents itself. And this is a matchup against the Bucs where it should be. Receivers should be able to go out and have a good game. We are still seeing, Derrick Henry. He is still a kind of game script dependent running back. The nice thing for him is he's been falling into the end zone kind of regardless. Lamar Jackson hasn't been taking away that role because they really don't have a big red zone threat. I mean, obviously, likely Andrews a little bit, but that's not really what they're using them for. But I think if obviously in a high scoring game, we're probably going to want to be facing or targeting a lot of overs. I'm probably going to want to do that with more of the receivers. Now, I'm going to do the team by team breakdown, but I do want to call, guys, so many good NBA prop bets just popping in and out of the 9-5 cheat sheet right now. So like Dante DiVincenzo over 2.5 assists is really good. I actually really love that one. I think he's going to step up into a much bigger role. TJ McConnell under 5.5 assists. Bama Bayou under 13.5 rebounds and assists. You got OG Anunoby over 4.5 rebounds. Like so many good NBA bets that aren't getting bumped right away. Been very nice here to include those in some NFL slips. So I have a lot that are actually live right now where I just need like a few of these to hit because, again, these have been available on the board for quite some time. We'll jump into NFL. I know that's what you guys came here for. So we look at the Baltimore Ravens, and we are going to see really the top bet on the board, and really the only great bet that we have is going to be looking at Mark Andrews to get under 6.5 for his fantasy score on PrizePicks. Now, if you look at the projection data, it does like him to get the over a little bit there. But this is more rooted in the fact that you kind of look at last week as more of an outlier week, and you saw his snaps actually go down last week. The only thing that kept him afloat was, a big play with a touchdown. You take that away, and his week wasn't as good, and compared to kind of the receivers in the sense that like Isaiah likely gets treated more as a receiver, Mark Andrews more of a traditional tight end. That's where the Bucs struggle, is more with the receivers than with the tight ends. Now, they're not great against the tight ends either, but at least they're better at stopping tight ends. From there, I actually don't mind Justin Tucker to make 2 field goals. I know it's a 50-point game total, which probably means they're going to be going for it a little bit more. At the same time, this Bucs defense can be a little bit bend but don't break. They're going to give up some big chunk plays. But it wouldn't be surprising to see the Ravens have to settle for a few field goals, so I really don't mind that. But as we see here, that's really kind of it. We do see Justice Hill for under 6.5 for his fantasy score. That would correlate with the Ravens winning. We know, obviously, if we're doing that, I think we would tend to want to bet Derrick Henry for over his fantasy score. That just correlates. If they're playing from behind, if you guys think the Bucs are going to win, Justice Hill over fantasy score or something like that. Receiving yards, receptions, that'd be the way that we would want to go. Are we getting anything else that's really popping up, at least right now, in terms of good bets that we should be going out of our way to target? On PrizePicks, no, but I do want to take a peek at Zay Flowers because I do think this is another game that should be a good game for him. Just given the matchup here with the Bucs. And yeah, as a result, we are going to see his fantasy score be pretty high. Receiving yards at 60, that's probably right as well. And so what I want to do is I want to take a peek at Zay Flowers on the 9-5 props cheat sheet here. And I'm just sorting it by Zay Flowers receptions. We can see the average sportsbook line is favoring the under of about 5.5 receptions, about a 54% likely to hit, which is why it's not available on PrizePicks. But we do see that this could be, or I kind of think this is a good bet. And if you guys agree, plus 120 on Hard Rock bets, pretty good. We see on Fliff, it's plus 110. FanDuel, plus 112. So really not bad odds there if you guys agree with me. And the reason why I like this is because a lot of the times the Baltimore Ravens, when Zay Flowers is a part of the game plan, he's getting manufactured touches. And what I mean by that is they're giving him quick hitters, 2 to 3 of those per game. So it's an easy way for him to get those receptions. Then we just need a few game flow receptions, if you will, just naturally occurring throughout the game. And I do see that happening. He's someone that does average about 5.5 on the season. Given his role, he's projected to get around via the D, about 5.35 receptions. Again, I kind of like the over there. I think that's a good bet where the under is favored. I think if we attack bets like this specifically, like we have, this is going to pay off in the long term. And so we look at on underdog now, staying with the Bucs or staying with the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens. Still really not much there. If you guys want to do rushing yards for Lamar Jackson, you could. That's not really a bet that I want to be targeting, just kind of fluky in the sense that you have to bet on them getting the ball first, maybe get that extra possession. I don't want to really do that. And so maybe just more of the sleeper or kind of flip bet there with Zay Flowers over 5.5 receptions. And then Mark Andrews under his fantasy score on PrizePicks. Let's go ahead now and jump into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So really the biggest piece of news that we need for the Bucs is whether White is going to play at running back for them in this game. The thing about it is they really don't need him to play. If he's not healthy enough to go, like fully healthy, they don't need him to go because they have Sean Tucker, who obviously looked like a stud last week, and they also have Bucky Irvin, who has also looked like a stud as well. You could argue that White has been the worst of the three, which is kind of what we saw throughout the preseason as well. Sean Tucker was probably the best throughout the preseason, especially in terms of making big plays as well. Kind of reminds me a lot of like if you will, Chase Brown and Zach Moss, where Zach Moss is someone that typically will just make the correct play more times than not. That's what you get out of White. But with Bucky Irving, you kind of are still getting that, but at least there's a little bit more big play upside compared to White, whereas Sean Tucker may not always make the correct play, but he is someone that has the best big play ability out of the three. So could easily end up being a three-headed monster if they all play, because I think once you put Sean Tucker out there, you can't put that back in the back. Like, you can't not play him anymore. And this is what I expected last week. I mentioned this during the 9-to-5 write-up, that I thought it would be a 60-40 split, and that's what ended up happening. If you guys took a stab on Sean Tucker, that might have been you winning the Millie Maker in DFS that week. But obviously for props betting, kind of becomes difficult to say what we should do, and I don't think we're really going to be getting that many prop bets for them because of that. Looking at Cade Otton's been pretty decently involved, especially with Mike Evans being terrible against the Saints. He was decent last week, getting 80% of the snaps. That was the least amount of snaps they've seen in a week. But that's with the Saints just playing terribly lately. Mike Evans got a little bit banged up last week. Didn't need to play a full allotment of snaps. We have seen Sterling Shepard play a decent amount, and Sterling Shepard's looked good. I always felt bad for him throughout his career, so it's nice to see him playing a decent amount. I do expect that to continue. They love running out 11 personnel, 10 personnel in some situations as well. So we are going to get some 3 receiver sets. I think that's what we should be expecting. And so Chris Godwin getting a lot of snaps as well. All 3 of those are going to be players we're looking at, especially in this game that's going to be high scoring. The question is, can Baker Mayfield continue to play well? And so we start with PrizePicks here, and what we're going to see is the top prop bet that we have on the board is one that I typically do not like in these situations. A very high scoring game, a game that's projected to be a close scoring game as well. You get one of the top pass catchers in this offense. I don't really want to bet the under. I get why the line's so high, and I kind of get why Vegas can't get that high as well, because it's just a lot, especially when Vegas is favoring the under decently well with Chris Godwin get under 6.5 receptions. That makes sense, but there's also not a bet that I feel like we need to be avoiding. If you guys like the over, go for it. If you guys think the under is fine as well, like, go for it. I wouldn't talk you out of that. I will say Mike Evans to get under 12.5 for a fantasy score seems vastly too low. To me, this feels like we are getting the low line with Mike Evans simply because he played the Saints last week, who he just always is bad against for whatever reason. You take away that game, and he's gotten the over in 2 straight games. Against Detroit, he did struggle, which was a little bit random. I get that. Denver is a defense we're kind of staying away from. And so, again, if this game is going to be that high scoring, I do think there's a good chance that he gets that over. I would rather go with that than bet Chris Godwin for his under fantasy score. They are kind of projecting Rachaad White to play in this game. And so I will say, if he does play and he does start, this is way too low of a line for his rushing yards. Like, I would be favoring the over there. Like, if you had to be like, Eric, which bet do you want to do here? Like, you need to give me a Rachaad White bet. What is it? I would say, all right, we can go with this one. Now, obviously, on PrizePicks Underdog, we don't need to be chasing a bet like this. Let's see, Cade Otton to get under 4 receptions. I mean, I don't know. I think I'd rather favor the over. Baker Mayfield to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns does seem to be a pretty low line there as well. Like, I would be favoring the over there as well. These feel like more like traditional sportsbook bets, though. Again, we're just chasing the fact that this game is projected to be a high-scoring game. And we look at it like both teams are bad at stopping the pass. And so I'm more on board with, like, Cade Otton for over 4 receptions. We see the targets have been there. I think there's a good chance that he does get to 4 receptions in this game. Again, this game that's supposed to be high-scoring. I would say that would correlate with Chris Godwin getting his under fantasy score, but I want to bet on Chris Godwin to get under his fantasy score. He's just, talk about those manufactured with Zay Flowers. That's Chris Godwin's finally getting used that way this year. It was so annoying last year, him not getting used that way. But that's not a bet that I want to be targeting, especially on PrizePicks where it's full PPR. But again, I do like Mike Evans for his over fantasy score, and you compare that up with Baker Mayfield over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Now, jumping into Underdog for Tampa Bay, the best bet that we have is going to be Cade Otton for his under fantasy score. That slight prop line difference is a really big factor in this, actually. Rachaad White to get under 7.8 for a fantasy score is an interesting one there as well. I do find that interesting because this is basically saying he's not going to score a touchdown, but he is someone that does get some involvement in the passing game. But if this does end up being a 3-headed monster, let's say White still is the lead back. Let's say he ends up being 55% of the work. Then you got Bucky Irving getting, 30% of the work maybe. It leaves like 15% to Sean Tucker. I could see that end up being the case. Maybe this end up running the hot hand, but I do think White, I don't think he lost his starting job necessarily, but I don't think he's a lock to start even. And so if I had to get a bet slip just for this game, it would be something like this: Baker Mayfield over 1.5 passing touchdowns. You compare that up with Mike Evans to get over 12.5 for a fantasy score. That actually doesn't reduce the payout too much, even though that's pretty heavily correlated. Micro Andrews to get under his fantasy score, I'm kind of okay with that. We did say that that's the best bet on the board, even though I don't necessarily love that. Not going to go away from the board. And then I do like Rashad. This is kind of my personal favorite bet. I do like Rashad Bateman to get over 34.5 for his receiving yards. Maybe shop around if you guys are someone that's not playing on PrizePicks or Underdog. I think that's a good bet though. So now let's get into the next game. We got the Chargers versus the Cardinals, and this is definitely more of a difficult one, especially as it sits right now, just in the sense that we are expecting Quentin Johnston to sit, but we don't know really what that's going to mean. He's kind of their downfield threat. We saw Simon Fioco have a really good game last game with Quentin Johnston out. Now, he didn't play a lot, and so I think the expectation is going to be that Ladd McConkey is going to lead the way. At the same time, it could just mean that we are getting some tight end snaps as well, a little bit more tight end production as well. And I do think calling out those tight end snaps is important. So like Will Dissly ended up getting 67% of the snaps last week. Maybe that was something that they saw after the bye, that they're like, all right, we need to get him more snaps in this one. That is also, should call it as a result of Hayden Hurst being out, but Will Dissly ended up playing a lot of snaps in that game and had a really good game there. 5 targets, 4 receptions. I think that's something we can expect to incur again with him. So let's just take a peek at what we're getting for Will Dissly. Okay, so we're only getting receiving yards and longest reception on PrizePicks. Let's take a peek on the traditional books, and we are getting him at 3.5 receptions. I feel crazy to want to bet on this, but I do. Plus 125 for Will Dissly to get over 3.5 receptions. I feel good about it. Now the projection data is saying don't do it. That's a bad bet. I don't hate it. Again, Quentin Johnston out. Hayden Hurst most likely out. Cardinals do struggle at stopping the pass. I could see it happening. Say a peek at Ladd McConkey and his receptions as well while we're here. 4.5 receptions for Ladd McConkey. I would agree with that. That's going to be a pretty solid line there across the board. Very heavily likely for him to get over 4.5 receptions. So likely to get 5 receptions. And then I don't think we're going to get any Fioco. Yeah, we're not getting any Simon Fioco props. But he's someone that we did see play a decent amount when Johnston got injured. He did become the downfield threat. And so I did want to call that 51% snaps. He's someone that always looks pretty solid when he gets work. Obviously, he's not like an elite player by any means, but he's a good backup to have. So I do expect him to have a decent game. But again, I am expecting Ladd McConkey to lead the way here. And I kind of wish we were getting some fantasy score prop bets for both those, Will Dissly and Ladd McConkey. We are going to see the best bets are going to be for Dobbins. Kind of game script wise for J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, if it's a higher scoring game, he's going to get... if it's a game where they're playing with the lead, he's going to get 18 or so carries. That's just a high rush attempts total. I know that's what they're trying to do, but and kind of given their current roster construction and the players that are injured, it kind of makes sense for that to be their plan of attack to rush the football that much. But I don't know. I don't exactly love that. Let's jump into Underdog, seeing if we're getting any bets there. And let's start with the fantasy score, because I am noticing we are getting some here for them. I'm just going to type it in. Okay, so Ladd McConkey, 9. I don't mind that. Okay, so we did see he's projected probably more so to get 5 receptions. So was that 2.5 points there? I guess I don't hate that. Maybe that's kind of high. I don't know. I don't mind that, but I also... it feels like we'd be forcing it a little bit. It wouldn't be surprising to see Justin Herbert have a good game against Arizona. This is probably one of his best matchups of the year thus far. Tight bets that we have for sure. For sure. I guess I don't mind Herbert and Dobbins. If you guys want to bet those under fantasy scores, you can. Those are the top prop bets that we have. Just don't love it. And I also don't love the under fantasy score for J.K. Dobbins, because we look at this, his rush and his anytime touchdown line here is about 52% likely for him to score a touchdown. And so the fact that Vegas is still not liking the over there does tell us that the line is a little bit too high. But obviously, if he scores a touchdown, that's 6 points, and that's a lot. And so if you guys don't get what I mean by that, is basically what we're doing here when we calculate fantasy scores, we're taking the 0.5 receptions. And so because this has, 0.5 anytime touchdowns, because it has a 52% likelihood, you're doing 52% of 6 touchdown points to make the fantasy score edge line there. So let's go ahead and jump on into the Arizona Cardinals, and some of our bigger edges are going to be here. I do want to call it that the one weakness that this Chargers defense has does come with stopping the tight ends. And so when Marvin Harrison Jr. was maybe seeming like he could sit, I was really gearing up to bet on a lot of Trey McBride props. I thought he would crush, and I actually still think he could crush. That's going to be the way you're going to attack it, this defense. But I could be on board with the under here. Michael Wilson for his under fantasy score as well. You watch him, it seems like he should be really putting up big numbers. Maybe in a weird way, there's too mmany mouths to feed with Marvin Harrison Jr. Greg Dortch is a decent guy in terms of getting open. Michael Wilson has looked good, and then obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. I guess I could see that. And then obviously those two are getting their under fantasy scores. Kyler Murray's going to get his under fantasy score. I kind of get it, I guess. And this all correlates pretty heavily. Like the extra points made under with James Conner getting his under fantasy score. These ones all kind of make sense right now. Now, I do think there's a good chance that Trey McBride does get this over receiving yards. Probably a better sportsbook bet. That seems to be the theme for Monday. It just seems to be a better traditional sportsbook day. And so we take a peek at PrizePicks, the best bet that we have right now. Okay, we got two decent ones. So kicking points for Chad Ryland. Okay, we're seeing that's probably shouldn't be bumped on underdog to 7 because it's only 52% likely, I guess 52.8% likely to hit. Typically it's only 54% likelihood to hit that they're bumping up, but that's not bad. When Kyler Murray over 5.5 rushing attempts, not terrible. I did mention Greg Dortch is someone that, wouldn't be surprised to see involved. His production's kind of hit or miss. We are seeing a decent prop line difference with Michael Wilson as well. Maybe a little bit of milling opportunities there. But we have a solid enough board, I would say, in general, to make some good bets here on both sides. So let's go ahead and do that. So guys, before we get into the bet of the day, just want to remind you guys of the promo code that's going on the 9 to 5 website. Use the promo code Keep Cashing to get 20% off your first 9 to 5 membership. So make that $10 a month membership $8 for the first month. Okay, so because the edges are, smaller on PrizePicks as it sits right now, Mark Andrews under fantasy score. Would argue we probably should be doing then Isaiah Likely for over his fantasy score. Likely's fantasy score is lower than Mark Andrews, which doesn't make sense. So I did want to toss it out. I do like Mike Evans to get his over fantasy score as well. And then Kyler Murray over 5.5 rush attempts. Those are all okay, but let's go ahead and get into the underdog slip. We are getting slightly better edges there. And then so looking at the underdog bets that we are currently getting, I am just running off the top of the board here with these top 4. Okay, again, coming off of 7 out of the 8 hitting on Sunday. Obviously, that's really good. We like that. Basically, we're betting on Trey McBride to not score a touchdown here. Now, again, I do want to say Chargers' weakness in their defense is stopping opposing tight ends. Trey McBride, you could argue, has been the best tight end. I would say George Kittle, but one of the best tight ends in the league, maybe top 3. Michael Wilson is someone that, could easily score a touchdown as well. I'm probably more in favor of that one, but obviously Vegas likes the unders there. Same thing with K-Don and Rashad White. And then I do like Ladd McConkey to get over 4.5 receptions. Now, this is like 0.89x, so not great in terms of the payout here, but good enough. And I do think there's a good chance that Will Dissly does get 3 receptions. I do think there's a good chance that both of these two, their fantasy, Ladd McConkey's fantasy score on PrizePicks, I think will be a good one depending on what it comes out to be. Right now, it's like 9.5 on underdog. So if it's within like 2 of that on PrizePicks, I think I would want to be betting the over. And then Will Dissly as well. If we get his fantasy score, that might be a better route, but I do think there's a good chance that he gets over 3 receptions, at least 3 receptions as well. Now, that's going to be all for this video. I do want to remind you guys of the promo code on the website. Make sure to use that when you guys sign up for your 9 to 5 membership. Get access to all the tools for $10 a month. But when you use the promo code Keep Cashing, get the first month for $8. Leave a like, guys. That does help out the video a lot. Comment your favorite bets as well. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.